Welcome back to BB Kingle Halloween Origins. Now, this crazy scientist decided to mix a load of body parts together to see if he can make a living person. Now that you should be able to guess from. Today we're looking at the origin behind Frankenstein. Seeing as though Frankenstein was a book, there's nothing it really came from. It hasn't come from like old Greek kind of myths or anything like that, or like sightings or anything. It's just a woman, Mary Shelley, who was the author and English writer who wrote the book. It's what she experienced. So this is a different one. The origin of Frankenstein starts off with an eruption, a volcano. In 1815, Mount Tabora erupted and killed roughly 100,000 people immediately after the eruption. Said to be the most devastating eruption ever, causing the most deaths, due to after was 3 years near enough of darkness. The amount of ash and soot from the volcano covered near enough the world, mainly places in Asia, North America and Europe. Mary Shelley decided to go on vacation. She wanted to go to Switzerland, so they went to Lake Geneva in 1816. Mary Shelley, her husband Percy Shelley, Mary's stepsister Claire Clermont, and a 4-month-old baby went to Lake Geneva for a nice little break. So this was right in the middle of when the 3 years of darkness was happening. There was famine, starvation. There was pandemics that came about due to the eruption. The world was not a nice place to live in during those 3 years, so they just thought they'd escape a bit and go somewhere in the summer. However, due to the eruption, the weather was not what they expected at all. Claire was also pregnant with a man called Lord Byron's son. So Lord Byron also came to where they were staying at Lake Geneva, and he also brought his doctor called John. Byron was obviously a lord, very well to do, and he rented out a big villa on Lake Geneva. So on a night they'd all gather around and they'd all go around Byron's for some food and a bit of a chat. Like I said, the weather was catastrophic, it was terrible. They were even stuck in this villa one night for 3 days. They just couldn't leave. The lightning, the thunder, the rain was all torrential. Wind, unbelievable, so they were stuck there. They obviously, back in 1816, no heating or anything, so they were using light by candles, trying to get heat from fires. A real horror movie look to it. The men of the group were sat around discussing if they believe human corpses can be galvanised or reanimated. Now that's a very key point, and I'm going to go into what that is now. Galvanised is the science of electrifying bodies. An Italian, Luigi Galvani, used an electrostatic machine to make frog legs twitch, demonstrating how they can understand electrical basis of nerve impulses, and that was during the 1790s. So this is 26 years later, discussing to see if, well, you got legs to twitch, frog legs, 26 years ago, so could we possibly bring a human back to life using the same kind of technique? Shelley was a part of the conversation too, however she was a listener. She said that she used to just sit and listen to what the men had to say, so she's obviously picking this up and thinking about it. Also, science back then was dissecting human bodies. They were using body parts, so they'd use criminals' bodies. They'd dig up the graves of criminals, use their limbs, which means that even before Frankenstein was made, he was already a criminal. So there's that kind of link there as well. So they've used criminal body parts to make Frankenstein in the book, but also during science around that time as well, they did that anyway. They would use criminals' bodies. So kind of before Frankenstein even ever done anything, he was already a criminal, technically. That's quite a bit clever, isn't it? So on the first night of the 3 nights, Byron said, right, let's all see who can write the best scary novel. A little short story, who can do the best one. So sleepless nights went by and Mary still had nothing. However, she thought back to these conversations of dissecting and galvanization, and lo and behold, she decided to write Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. So she wrote a very short part of that story, the basis, what it was. Obviously Frankenstein, a crazy scientist, making this body come to life off using different people's limbs. And then in 1818, she released the novel. Wow. So it all started with a volcano erupting, causing bad weather, making them have to stay in on their summer holiday, which she was already in that kind of like bad mood because of all the weather and everything that's going on. So the weather made it more of a horror aspect in the house. Men talking about galvanization and dissecting humans, trying to make people come back to life. All of this merged into one, create Frankenstein, which, like I said, was released in 1818. So there is the origins of Frankenstein, completely different to other ones I've looked at. Very interesting read as well. If you did enjoy this video, please check this one out here and follow me on my search for the origins of the most well-known Halloween creatures.